Hello again. I'm Mark Swartz. I'm the executive director, and it's my honor to present the Barbara Grau Outstanding Housing Advocate Award. It's presented annually by LCBH in memory of Barbara Grau, LCBH's first full-time staff attorney. Those who worked with Barbara recall that she wore her heart on her sleeve and that her clients knew that she cared deeply about them. As one of LCBH's first staff attorneys, Barbara advocated for renters who were living in problem buildings, and she also had a lot to do with the passage of the Chicago Residential Landlord-Tenant Ordinance. Barbara passed away in 1998. To honor her work, LCBH awards the annual Barbara Grau Award to an individual or organization that excels in one or more of the following areas: removing discriminatory barriers that prevent people from obtaining decent housing, assisting tenants to defend their right to affordable housing, and demonstrating leadership in preserving affordable housing through community or citywide advocacy. This year's winner does all of these things and more. I joined LCBH in 2008. I was hired to work on the tenants in foreclosure program under a MacArthur grant. It was a 2-year terminal grant. And as the mortgage foreclosure crisis and its impact on tenants grew, we were able to grow and hire another staff attorney. At this point, we had the first version of the Keep Chicago Renting Ordinance on the books. And we were anticipating raising lots of Keep Chicago Renting Ordinance defenses. And we knew that in addition to filing cases in law division, which we weren't all that experienced with, that we'd have to handle a lot of appeals and think about strategizing around that. I told Cheryl Lawrence, who was then the executive director, that I need to find somebody with extensive civil legal aid experience who believed in LCBH's mission. I wanted somebody who knew about foreclosure defense, Chicago's housing laws, who felt comfortable in law division, who was very familiar with appellate practice, and would work for peanuts. So it was a bit of a unicorn, but I actually, I knew Frank from, I've seen him in practice. I knew him from around, and we really wanted to find the right person who could help, shepherd this program. And I just bumped into him happenstance in an elevator in the Daily Center and told him about it. And, the rest is history. Among the many things I admire about Frank is his forward thinking. For Frank, this isn't just about how we protect tenants, who are living in buildings that are undergoing foreclosure, but it's like, how do we protect, tenants who are facing displacement of any sort, of all sorts. Frank's vision includes a just cause ordinance that would prevent tenants from being displaced as landlords and property investors sell, rehab, and flip old buildings for profit. Frank's vision includes a proactive rental inspection program that would guarantee that people were living in safe, affordable housing that doesn't impact their health, that they're not compromising in order to live in a place that they can afford. Frank's vision includes building powerful coalitions like the Chicago Housing Justice League, that he is really, he's a central force behind. And we're so glad that so many of the coalition members are here to honor Frank. Coalitions like that include tenants, community-based organizations, and labor unions who will advocate for the changes that Frank can envision. Frank, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I really appreciate having you as a colleague and also as a mentor. On behalf of LCBH, I'm honored to present you with the Barbara Grau Award. I just want to say one thing before I leave the stage. I'll take this with me so it doesn't fall. This is another Bernie Klein picture and or photo, and it speaks Frank, because we were trying to, of all the beautiful Bernie Klein photos that we could pick from, this one has environmentalism in it. I know that's another area of interest for Frank, and he always is thinking about housing and a broader perspective of housing, which includes the environment. So that's why we picked that one for you, Frank.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Mark and Alan for this award and the LCBH board. It's certainly a humbling experience for me, a certain unreality about it. I guess Mark didn't really complete the story. Mark actually heard me making some sort of left-wing ideological comment to a corporate attorney in the elevator at the Daily Center. And afterwards, I was getting off the elevator and Mark said to me, "Aren't you Frank Avellone?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You need to come work for us." And I said, "I'm not looking for a job." And he said, "No, but you must come talk to us." And I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, but you must." And I said, "Stop bothering me and I will." So he finagled me to come to the office, at least chat with him. And I gave him a 1-year commitment. That was 7 years ago. And so here we are today. As is typical for me, I've prepared a little moralizing in a presentation. This might be the first and last opportunity I get to do this. But I want to at least hearken back to the very first time we received a monetary award for one of our clients under the KCRO, $20,000 for a multinational corporation that refused to do the right thing by people under the law. And so LCBH, because we do a lot of eviction defense work and substandard conditions work, we're not really used to receiving lots of money and processing money. That's something other law firms do. But we were getting used to it. And when we got our first check, our Colombian paralegal, Santiago Castellón Valencia, some of you remember Santiago, yeah? He came into my office with the $20,000 check and he handed me this. And he said, "Man, you take from the rich, you give to the poor, you should wear a hat." And I said, "Well, I'm quite certain I don't look like Errol Flynn, and I certainly don't feel like someone from a 1940s Robin Hood movie, but okay." So from our traditions, we understand that the meaning of life is found in the struggle, but not just any struggle. It has to be a struggle to repair the world, a struggle to do something meaningful and purposeful to make this world a more humane place, or as some of us say, tikkun olam. I come before you after 40 years of anti-poverty work in Chicago for 17 years, in rural Ohio for 20 years, in small cities in Ohio for a number of years. And I would have thought that I wouldn't need a sense of urgency about things, but I do have a sense of urgency about things. Time has not worn that away. And in fact, the time we live in strikes me as more desperate than ever. Our sense of identity and purpose in the world, I don't believe, is drawn from the stuff we own. I don't have a Mercedes sedan, but if I did, I hope I didn't drive my identity from it. I think our identity and purpose and meaning in life is derived from the interactions that we have with one another and the environment around us. And that's the kind of stuff that really matters. This struggle to make the world a better place means that we have to join hands and minds together and to fight to make the world humane. The fight to pass the KCRO and to maintain it and to use it on the ground is an example of how this works. For truly, there were a lot of people that had to link arms together and share in this fight and to share in this struggle. It certainly bears mentioning again and again the comrades that were involved in this. Certainly Communities United took a major role. Damian Cogan and Nick Jefferson and Diane Lemus. Diane, wave. Shout out to Diane. There's Diane. I love it. Adam from BPI, John Bartlett from MTO. John, shout out to you. These are great leaders in your midst who have plowed in this field for years and years and years and continue to do so. Where they find the energy is beyond me. For LCBH's part, particularly in enforcing the KCRO for the past 7 years, I think we need to first and foremost acknowledge the bravery of our clients. The life of being working class, the life of being poor, which in contemporary America is the same thing, and why should that be? Yeah, but the bravery that we have, that our clients have, people like Mars Colton that you've met tonight, to add to the normal routines and difficulties of ordinary life, and to take on the burden of seeking justice is no small matter for them, yeah, because the lion's share of people simply walk away from the difficulties that they confront because everyday living poses enough, yeah. So congratulations to our clients for their bravery. And of course, special thanks to the frontline people at LCBH, particularly when it comes to the KCRO, Aileen Flanagan for her tireless work on the helpline, where she would spend hours upon hours upon hours with each individual person, not just giving generalized advice, but digging into the details of their lives and their situation. People like Teresa Herrera, where are you, Teresa? Somewhere there, who, again, spending hours and hours of time dealing with people in distress, people whose fundamental human need for housing was being destabilized. And for many of these people, destabilized after living in the same place for not only years, but in some instances, decades. Let's not minimize the importance of rental housing. 600,000 rental units in Chicago, 1.4 million Chicagoans. That's 55% of the population. But to the industry and too many people in city council, too many Democrats, tenants are fungible. They're just another piece to move around the city. How many times, raise your hand, have you heard in eviction court, the judge says, why doesn't she just move? Yeah, okay. Page 2. Additionally, our private partners and private law firms have done yeoman work in this regard, Jenner and Block, Chris Tompkins in particular. And I do want to mention not only Jenner and Block and Chris here in Chicago, but Jenner has taken the mantle of housing rights in their national law firm and have done excellent work in California and other places that have made our work in Chicago here a little bit easier. The small private law firm in Logan Square of Cameron and Kane was trained by LCBH in how to do work under the KCRO, and it took it seriously and has done a great work there. We have to give a shout out where credit is due to the city law department. There were a number of cases where LCBH, as the pros from Dover, were called into a KCRO case to clean up a mess or to take the case to a different place or to deal with the particularly challenging issues in the case. And there were many instances where we called upon the city law department and Jenner and Block, but we called upon the city law department, come in and defend your own law. And in many instances, they not only did that, but they did excellent work. So hats off to them. Appreciate that. So the KCRO is an example, an excellent example of our routine slogan, when we fight, we win. And this gives us a sense of hope and a sense of inspiration to fight on in the many battles that will be ahead of us. And yet, in the midst of that hope and inspiration, I think these days we have to ask the question, why is it necessary to spend all this time, all this money, and all this energy over and over and over again, just in the hopes of receiving crumbs off the table of the establishment and the wealthy? Why? What have we learned? Well, in the past 50 years, I've been in law practice 40 years. God, it's a long time. For the past 50 years, certainly as a country, we've been indoctrinated into thinking that this sort of twisted and perverse form of capitalism that we live under is sort of an inevitability. It's the way things are. It's the way things have always been. It's the way things have always be. Actually, it's just now. Yeah, it's new. It's not inevitable. And that this system places the whims of the wealthy over the needs of people and puts profit over the needs of people. And spends our common resources, the resources of we the people, on the implements of war and surveillance and undermining anyone and anything that dares to disagree with it. It's a difficult time, and we could only hope that the major media does its job in challenging that power, and yet in recent years, they've become complicit cheerleaders in ratifying that power. We live in a very different time, I think. In this era of climate change, this twisted and broken system has brought us right to the brink of species elimination and hence laid bare the unwillingness and the inability of this system to grapple with and really deal with the needs of human beings in this country and elsewhere. I believe that system is both the change of the system is both necessary and inevitable. I don't think that what we have now needs to be. The question then is, how will change happen? How will system change happen? And more importantly, when? Because unlike in prior times, the clock is ticking. Yeah, the clock is ticking. And because governance by elites and technocrats and the wealthy has failed us, we must then engage with one another to democratize our communities and our city. Our inspiration must come from a profound recognition that the mandates of our moment in time and from a vision of what Chicago can be. So I ask, can we envision Chicago where the homeless are housed? Yeah, well, if so, then let's implement fully a housing first policy. I would ask as well, can we envision a Chicago where we have the courage to say no to the next wave of mega projects, because there's some in the pipeline, yeah, that seek to use public resources to prop up the highly extractive and highly consumptive lifestyles of the wealthy in utter defiance of climate change. Climate change necessitates that we have modest living conditions. Lincoln Yards is not modest, yeah, nor are the projects that we're going to hear about in the near future. Can Chicagoans have the courage that we the people don't need to incentivize private markets to do right by the housing needs of people? We don't need a handful of units that are affordable after decades and hours of fight and struggle. What we need is to use we the people's resources to expand public housing, invest in social housing, invest in limited equity co-ops, and invest in the stability of our people rather than their accumulation of equity and the stability of our neighborhoods. All right. The Chicago that we live in today is very much different than it was 100 years ago. And I can envision a Chicago that is very much different than the one that we live in now. And I know that you can too. I look across this room and I know quite a number of you. And I know that you have in your mind and in your heart a different sensibility about what we can be. But unlike the past, the clock is ticking. Climate change and its cascading interconnected calamities mandate that we put a new system in place now, not for our grandchildren, but for us now. Yeah, there isn't much time. They tell us at COP26 that in 2030, we're going to meet the goal of 2030. That's only 9 years from now. I've only been at LCBH for 7 years. It's just around the corner, right? So let me, in conclusion, my friends, say that let's continue to come together. Let us roust from slumber our neighbors and urge them to join us. We have our work cut out for us because power concedes nothing without a fight, as we know. This work is long and it's arduous, but in it, we may find meaning and purpose, and Lord knows, maybe love. It's a work that we must do to save our species, to democratize our landscape, and to demand our right to the city, this Chicago, right now. Thanks.